guys, welcome to vlog 2, Victober vlog 2. Sorry if you hear any banging. I don't know what my mom's doing. I think she's cleaning stuff, but there's a lot of banging going on. So anyway, we're just gonna go into this. It is the 20th of October. I did take a few days off away from vlogging, mostly because I just didn't have a lot of thoughts to share. But today, the 20th, I have a day off of work. It's Thursday. There's my family, most of my family's not going to be around. I don't have any other plans, which usually on my days off recently I've had things that have taken up a big portion of the day, but not today. So let's get into what I'm reading right now, kind of my plans for the day, and yeah. So I am still reading Bleak House. It's upstairs and I didn't want to go grab it along with another book that I'll mention in a second. But Bleak House is still going well. I definitely think it's going to be my favorite of this Victober. I just really love it a lot. I really love Esther as a character. I really love just the characters in general in this book. Do I like it as much as David Copperfield? I would have to think a little bit more about that. I feel like David Copperfield has more of a cozy, I don't want to say cozy feel, more of a cozy feel, maybe a little bit. Bleak House is still very cozy to me, but David Copperfield, I don't know, the characters in that, it's just a little bit more lighthearted than Bleak House. Bleak House is still pretty lighthearted, but David Copperfield I think is even more so. But I do think the writing in Bleak House is better, and I think what he's doing with the narrative in it is very interesting and makes the book very unique and fun in its tone. So I don't know, I'll have to finish the book and then decide, but I am really loving it. So I'll probably start off reading my portion of that today. I did not read my portion yesterday, so either I'm going to have to read extra over the next couple of days, or more likely I'll probably just read another portion on Sunday. As I've mentioned before, I usually try to avoid that, but sometimes things just happen, and this is one of those weeks. The other book I started physically reading is Dracula by Bram Stoker. That is the other one that is also upstairs, and I didn't want to go grab. I'm only 40 pages into it. I actually didn't read Bleak House yesterday because I wanted to focus a little bit more on Dracula and try to get a little deeper into it, because it was kind of a slog in the beginning. I'm not hating it, but I do feel like it's dragging a bit in this first few chapters. The first few chapters we're really only introduced to Dracula himself and Jonathan Harker, who's the current narrator, and neither of them are particularly interesting. I mean, Dracula's Dracula, like what I would have expected, and Jonathan Harker, like I don't really feel any heart from him yet. So I did really like kind of the first real scene that we got where Jonathan Harker is being taken to Dracula's castle. I thought that was a really interesting scene sequence, but nothing else has been particularly interesting, which has made it a bit of a slower read than what I was hoping. That being said, I'm not going to DNF it yet. I am going to continue and hopefully get a good chunk of the way through today. However, I do intend to read my poem and my short story today for Victober. I know a lot of other people are reading several short stories. Just for my reading speed and just the amount of time I have decided to only read one, and preferably one of the shorter ones I could find. So I ended up going with Thrawn Janet from this collection of short stories by Robert Louis Stevenson. It contains The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Terrifying Tales. So Thrawn Janet is one of those tales, and as opposed to a lot of the others that are like 20-30 pages, this one's only 10. So I decided to go with that just because, like I said, I want to focus a lot more on Dracula today, but I do want to get that off of my TBR, so that is my choice. I also haven't read anything by Robert Louis Stevenson in a while, so it will be kind of fun to revisit his style. Then for my poem, I decided to go with The Lady of Shallot by Lord Tennyson. I have read this at least once before, but it was a long time ago, and frankly, I'm not even 100% sure that I actually read the whole poem. I think I might have just read like a stanza or two and was like, nah, I don't really want to read this, because I've just never been a huge poetry person. But I have been rewatching Merlin, and it's put me into a bit of a King Arthur headspace. Side note, if you haven't watched Merlin, it's a really great show. It's on Netflix. It's a very comforting show. It has a lot of flaws. It definitely has a lot of plot holes, and the ending, the final season, I have issues with, and some of the characterization as the series went on, I kind of struggled with for different reasons, but it's just a comforting show. Mostly I just like the relationships between the characters and how they're explored in that show. That's my favorite part about it, and so there's a great comfort that goes along with that. So anyway, that's besides the point. I'm going to read The Lady of Shallot, like I said. I also read The Half-Stick of Shadows earlier this year by Laura Sebastian, which is a retelling of King Arthur from the perspective of the Lady of Shallot. So I think with that in my mind, mind, it will be fun to visit this poem. And I may throughout the month read a couple more poems. I've actually been very intrigued to read a bunch of the poems from the poetry collections that I have from the Victorian era. Emily Bronte, I want to read more of her poems. I'd like to read a couple of Thomas Hardy poems as well. I also recently got a collection that includes The Goblin Market from Christina Rossetti, and I've been curious about that. Obviously this Alfred Lord Tennyson collection. So yeah, I may read a couple more before the end of the month, but that one I'll for sure read. That will cover the prompt. I have watched some of Roz's videos about poems, which she says covers her prompt too. So technically I have fulfilled the prompt, but I do want to read myself at least one. I will also mention that on audiobook I am listening to The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I am a few chapters in. I'm not there. I'm actually further than that. I haven't updated my bookmark in this yet, but I'm enjoying it. I will say I'm not enjoying it as much as I hoped I would, unfortunately. The narrator is great, and I feel like he's really bringing these characters to life in a way that I wouldn't have imagined them, but not in a way that's like, that's not how I imagine them at all. It's like, oh, I can totally see how these characters would be like that, and I just hadn't really thought it through that way. However, I feel like the way these characters are characterized has just been kind of a turnoff for me. Like, I don't have any of them that I really care about. And honestly, none of them that I'm super interested in. I mean, I have some level of interest in Dorian Gray and some level of interest in Basil. I really don't like Lord Henry. I understand his role in the plot, and that has an interesting aspect to it. And if I remember correctly, I think he does get a little more interesting later on in the story, just as things change with Dorian, as Dorian Gray develops into who he becomes. I feel like Lord Henry has some interesting conversations and dynamics, if I remember correctly. So I have hope for the second half. I'm only through the first half, and the first kind of super dramatic event that happens with Sybil Vane, if you've read it, has not happened yet, but it's getting close. So after that, things may change for me, but right now I find that I'm not really the type to super like the kind of characters that are in this and super be interested in their story. I'm just not usually drawn into lazy, arrogant, vain men sitting around talking about their philosophies that they think make them so intelligent, but actually they're just selfish and lazy, and that's all that their philosophy is based on, but they act like it's some sort of great, interesting, very wise idea about life, but really they just want to shock people, and it's just not my vibe. Until some dramatic things start happening with these characters, then it can get interesting, because I feel like that's very like a dark academia feel, which I do like on some level, but I do tend to like it a little bit more when there's death involved or more dramatic things going on where it's not just them sitting around being obnoxious, but rather them being the way they are, dealing with or causing even these terrible situations. So I think once I get more into that portion of the book, the second half, I'll start to like it a little bit better. I will say the writing is beautiful. Like, I can't deny that the writing is lovely in this book, but yeah, this first half just hasn't done it for me the way I had hoped so anyway, we'll see how that goes. I probably won't listen to any of that today, because I think when I have times to listen to things, like, I'll probably take either a bath or possibly a shower, or probably both, honestly, because I do need to wash my hair, but I also kind of like the idea of taking a bath. So it may be like a bath that transitions into a shower so I can wash my hair effectively. But anyway, I'll probably focus on listening to Victober videos, because I do have a playlist of watch later specifically for Victober that I need to get through, and I don't have a ton of videos on there, but enough that I do need to be working through that. So anyway, that's probably the plan. I also may watch something tonight. I'm not 100% sure what it will be. I don't know if I'll continue with Vanity Fair, the miniseries, or I may watch To Walk Invisible about the Bronte sisters, or Far From the Madding Crowd. I haven't watched yet this month, which that's a tradition to always watch that sometime during Victober. That is my favorite adaptation, I think, or one of them for sure, but I almost am certain that it is my favorite. I don't know. Anyway, or I really do want to watch North and South at some point, so I have options for what I want to watch. We'll just see what piques my fancy. I also technically am supposed to edit and upload a video so it can be up tomorrow, Friday morning, because I usually try to post Tuesday and Friday mornings, but I just kind of want to focus on reading and watching Victorian stuff today. Like, I don't really want to work, so I think I'm just gonna put that video up a day later. It's gonna be my discussion about female friendship and solidarity and just relationship in general in Victorian literature. I really liked making it. It's kind of me just talking about a bunch of female friendships and female interactions within some of the Victorian literature I've read, but it also, I did kind of create points, and I'm interested to hear what people think about it. I have scheduled a trip to Boston in the spring, and I am so freaking excited. When I was 16, I went to Boston with my parents, and it was my favorite trip I've ever been on. I absolutely loved the area, and I have wanted to go back ever since. And so now, about 10 years later, I'm finally doing it. I'm going by myself too. It's gonna be my first like real trip that I go by myself, which is kind of scary but also very exciting. Luckily, you know, I'll call my mom every night. She has the Find My on her phone, so she's able to know where I'm at all times. So we have that. I'll try not to walk around when it's dark outside and stuff like that. But anyway, I am just ultimately very, very excited. It's still 6 months away, so I have a long time before I need to like know for sure what I'm going to do, but I have a pretty good idea already, of course. I'll have 6 full days there, so I'm planning on, for 3 of the days, taking 3 different day trips. One to Concord, mostly to see Louisa May Alcott's house, but also there's other historical and literary sites around there that I'd love to visit as well. Last time we went, I did drive through Concord on one of our bus tours, but we didn't actually get to stop anywhere besides briefly at the battlefields that's associated with the early Revolutionary War in Concord. And we saw Louisa May Alcott's house, but it was just from the bus. We didn't like go inside or anything. So very much want to do that, especially now that I know Little Women is one of my favorite books. I absolutely love it. I've learned a little bit about Louisa May Alcott herself, and I find her very interesting. Then I also want to take a day trip to Salem, which I did go to last time as well, but there's just so much to see and do there. It's a really fun place, so I wanted to revisit and see a few more things, maybe some of the same things, and yeah, just enjoy my time there. And I want to take a day trip to Quincy, Massachusetts, which is where John Adams has all his houses basically have been put there. And if you don't know this about me, John and Abigail Adams are some of my favorite historical figures. At the time, I knew about them, but I didn't know a lot, so I don't really remember. We did go there, but I don't really remember anything about it besides John Quincy Adams's huge library that was in the backyard that I was like, I want this in my life. So that obviously meant a lot to me, so it's stuck in my mind. But now that I know more about John and Abigail and really have an affection for them, I feel like it will stick with me better. I'll appreciate it more this time. So I do want to go back there. Plus there's just a lot of other cute little historical areas in that little town, and it's near beaches, so I'll be able to get a little bit of that in my day trip there. And then of course the other 3 days will be spent in Boston. I want to go to like the Brattle Bookshop, which I didn't know existed when I last went there, but now I do, and I really want to go. And just being able to walk around and see some of the historical sites that I did see last time that I just want to see again. Go to the wharf just because it's beautiful. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. So anyway, those are things going on in my life. That's what I'm doing today. Let's end this clip because it's stupid long and go into either montage or my next clip depending on what happens in my life. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of a quieter update because I have things I want to share, but my brother and his friends are hanging out just outside my room, so you may hear them a little bit, but I'm going to try to keep it so that they don't hear me. So anyway, it is the day after my last clip, and I wanted to share a few things with you, update you on where I'm at with everything. Unfortunately, I didn't read quite as much as I wanted to yesterday, but I did read a good amount. Like I guess it was within a range of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a bit more, but I still feel like it was pretty successful. So quickly going through short story, Thrawn Janet. It was fine. I think I ended up giving it 2 stars on Goodreads, so I didn't really love it. Partially because it was really hard to read because they used dialect throughout the whole thing. It was like a man was telling the story in a bar and a tavern. It was a story that had interesting aspects, but nothing that really stood out. And in fact, the only things that stood out were kind of a sense of looking down on people for personal differences, and there was a little bit of a racist aspect to the story as well that I didn't really love to read. But I do like the narrative, even though it was difficult to read. The dialect made it feel a little extra like, yeah, just sitting around listening to this story. And it added an aspect of like what really happened, because this is just kind of like a local tale regarding the local church leader and why he is the way that he is. And I think there's a question that goes along with it as to whether or not that's accurate or what really happened between these people. So I did like that aspect, but it just wasn't quite enough to totally win me over. And 3 stars are really for books that I like but maybe didn't have that X factor, and I feel like this is one that I liked but not even enough for 3 stars, if that makes sense. So I did give it 2.75 on Storygraph, so it was just below a 3 stars, but it still was a little below average for me, unfortunately. Then I read The Lady of Shallot, the poem, and really loved it. I was really tempted to actually just start into The Isles of the King because like I mentioned in the last clip, I'm pretty sure I am in a bit of a King Arthur mood, and Lady of Shallot just beautiful and just brought me right back into it. So on Goodreads and Storygraph, I gave that poem 5 out of 5 stars. I just really, really enjoyed it. I also have gotten a good chunk of the way into Dracula. I'm not going to give big deep details about my thoughts on this right now, just because, like I said, my brother and his friends are there and I kind of want to keep this clip a little bit shorter. But I will say I'm just over 100 pages in, and it's really creepy in a wonderful way. Like, I'm really enjoying it. It was a bit of a slog. I honestly considered DNFing it, but I said, you know what, let's just give it to 100 pages at least and see how I feel, and I'm really liking it. There's some aspects about it that kind of remind me of The Phantom of the Opera, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Honestly, I'm due for a reread of that. But anyway, Dracula, there's some aspects that are similar to that, and yeah, it's a creepy book. It's a fun read. I'm really enjoying it. Hopefully that will continue. But what I most want to talk about just for a moment is Bleak House. I don't have my copy with me. It's upstairs again, and once again, I don't want to go get it. So anyway, I just love Esther so much, and I love it when I find a book with a romance that I really love and just have my heart and soul put into it, because it doesn't always happen for me. So this is a romance that just, I love her, and there was a part of the portion that I just read that was a little strange, having to do with Esther and her guardian, which if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. I still think it's a little bit strange, but I do feel like there is an aspect of simply wanting to make sure Esther is taken care of, and so I don't want to give spoilers, so I'll just say that. But I've moved past my concern a little bit, at least enough for me to just keep getting through the book and still loving the book. I will be very surprised if this book doesn't end up being my favorite read of Victober this year, and a new favorite of all time. I'm really, really loving it, and I think I just have like 200 pages left, and I'm sure my love will continue, I'm sure. So anyway, that's all I have to say to you. I have not done any more listening to Picture of Dorian Gray. I ended up listening to the soundtrack for The Phantom of the Opera to and from work today, which is great. I wasn't quite in the mood for Picture of Dorian Gray. Hopefully I'll get back in that mood. I only have a couple hours left in the audiobook, so I would love to get through it. It's just like I said last time, I'm not loving it as much as I hope to, and once again, I think I'm on the precipice of getting into a portion that I will really enjoy, but I'm not quite there yet, unfortunately, so we'll see how the rest of it goes. That is all from me for now, and I will update you when I have more to say, as usual. Hey guys, I'm going to make this update quick because I don't know who or when anybody's going to come in, so let's just get into what I've done the past few days. It is the 26th of October, so just a few more days. Some things that have been going on with reading. I did finish The Picture of Dorian Gray. Unfortunately, I didn't love it as much as I hoped I would. I have read it before, it was a reread. And I think I mentioned in my last clip that I was struggling with the first half, but I was hopeful for the second half, and it did improve for sure. The writing is beautiful. That is one of the best parts about it, is Oscar Wilde's writing. I really, really enjoyed that aspect. And I really liked Dorian Gray as a character. I found him him very fascinating, but most of the other characters I either didn't like in any way or just wasn't interested in, or kind of a mix of both. Obviously, there are books that I love that I don't like the characters, like Wuthering Heights, but I still find them interesting, and I think my problem with this one was that I wasn't overly interested in most of the characters, and the ones I disliked weren't dislikable in an interesting way to me. At least, I mean, it wasn't like there was no interest there for some of the other characters like Lord Henry and Basil, but I just didn't have the same level of interest in them as I do in a lot of other books. That all being said, I still ended up giving it 4 stars. I think on Storygraph I gave it 3.75, and then on Goodreads I gave it 4 stars. So pretty good. Like, I don't regret listening to it. I just think it's just not my type of story, I guess. There's aspects definitely to the plot I like, and like I said, I like Dorian Gray and his character development, his arc throughout the story, and there's definitely a lot to think about, but I'm not one to really love like philosophizing in books, especially when it's being done amongst lazy and vain people. Like, I feel like this book is full of people who have all these ideas and they're sharing, especially Lord Henry himself, but Dorian Gray as well later on in the story is kind of like this, where they're just lazy and arrogant and vain and selfish, but they think they're so wise even though they haven't actually experienced much of life, which I think the book does kind of comment on with Dorian Gray himself, where as he gains some pretty intense experiences, he kind of starts to question Lord Henry's view on life. But it just didn't grip me the way I would want it to grip me. I really was hoping that I'd give this a 5 stars on this reread. I think the first time I read it, I may have given it 5 stars. I'm not 100% sure, actually. I don't even know if I rated it the first time. It was years and years ago. So anyway, yeah, it was good. It was good. I was going to say fine, but it was more than fine. It was good. It was a good, solid book. I'm glad I read it, glad I listened to the audiobook. I thought the audiobook narrator was great. I just think it's just not necessarily the type of book that I would love necessarily, that would impact me, but I understand completely why other people absolutely adore it. And I definitely appreciate a lot about it and did enjoy, especially the second half. Like I said, definitely gripped me more than the first half. But yes, that's how I ended up feeling about that. Bleak House, not much more to say. Still enjoying it. Dracula, I almost DNF'd, but I decided not to, and it's definitely going in waves for me. There's times where I'm hitting some low lows, and there's other times where other scenes where I feel like it's a high high. So it's very up and down for me. I think as of right now, I would probably give it 3 stars because it's so up and down. So anyway, I will be finishing both of those probably Monday, which is the 31st. So that's probably when I'll next update you, because I don't think, unless I have like really intense feelings about something that happens in one of them before then, unfortunately I just haven't had as much going on the second half of the month, so I don't have as much B-roll footage. Sorry about that. But that's where I'm at with reading, and I will update you either when I have something to say or just to close out this vlog with my final thoughts on those 2 books. Hey guys, so it is November 1st and it is time to wrap up this vlog. I did end up finishing both of my books that I was trying to finish before the end of the month. Also, apologies in advance if you hear any water running through pipes. My mom, I think, is taking a shower or cleaning her bathroom or something, but you may hear some water in the pipes because I'm in the basement. So anyway, let's start by talking a little bit about Dracula. I did end up giving this 3 stars. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad. And it was definitely one of those 3 stars where it wasn't like average all the way through. It was more that it had really high highs for me. There were portions and scenes that I really enjoyed and thought were interesting, especially in the first half. And then there were a lot of portions that were really boring and I just felt like could have been cut down or changed to make them a lot more interesting. Just a lot of searching for Dracula that felt very redundant and just kind of unnecessary. Like, I felt like we could have ran through some of that discovery a little bit faster and had more interesting stuff go on. So anyway, more plot twists and things. Of course, this is a Victorian novel, so I wasn't expecting that dramatic of a storyline or anything necessarily. I mean, it did have a lot of drama to it. I just think, you know, if it had been written today, I think it would have gone in a little bit different direction. I actually do have a lot of thoughts about this, despite the fact that it was 3 stars. Just a lot of thoughts about symbolism in this book, some misogyny in this book, and how it was done. So I think I'm going to actually do a thematic ramble about this. If you are new to my channel, which I know many of you are, thank you so much for subscribing. Or if you just don't remember, because it's been a very long time since I've done it. A thematic ramble is not quite a review, it's more like just me discussing, like I said, kind of symbolism and just analytical thought within my reading experience of certain books, particularly books that I don't have a single focused reading vlog on if I just didn't think to do it or was not motivated to and then decided I actually did want to talk a little bit more about it. So that's probably a couple weeks away, but I do intend to do that with this book because, like I said, I have a lot of thoughts. So that's all I'm going to say for this vlog. And we're going to end on Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I just feel like it's fitting because I've been reading it all month long, and it's definitely my favorite thing that I read this month. The ending crushed my heart in many ways. It made me really sad at some portions. There was a whole portion where, without spoilers, there is a married couple where the woman ends up in a difficult situation and ends up running away. And it's a difficult situation that can make her look bad in her husband's eyes, but when he finds out, he's really distraught by it. But he's so, like, forgiving, and the way that was brought together was so sweet. It actually made me tear up a few times because it was just so, he wasn't the kind of character that I would expect to behave that way. So I really, really loved that portion, even though there was a lot of tragedy involved in that. Esther, how her romance came together was so cute, so cute. I don't want to give spoilers away, but I'm trying to at least give people who have read it a good idea of what I'm talking about. But yes, that was really, really cute. I felt like this book had a good combination in the end of tragedy and happy endings, and I really appreciated that. It just felt more like life, particularly for Charles Dickens, whose stories are very kind of fairy tale-like, and this one definitely is as well. But I do feel like he brought together certain things and had certain things occur in a way that felt more like a look on the complexities of life and the complexities of human beings, and it was just a delight. I absolutely loved this book. Do I like it as much as David Copperfield or more than David Copperfield? I don't know. I feel like the two of them, it would depend on my mood. David Copperfield is more whimsical and fun. For the most part, there is some tragedy, but it mostly feels whimsical and fun to read, whereas Bleak House, I think, feels a little bit more mysterious with some whimsy in there. So it just depends on my mood. I think I may like David Copperfield a little bit more because I think there's a little bit more characters that I just super love, whereas in this, there are a lot of characters I love, but it's just not as deep of a love. I don't know. Anyway, I need to keep pondering on that, really. But it's definitely a new favorite of all time. I really loved this. So glad I finally read it, and I'm so excited to continue to read Charles Dickens since I've had such good luck with these past 2 that I've read by him. So that is it, and that is Victober for 2022. It was such a good Victober. I think it was probably my best ever as far as amount that I read, as well as just quality. I will still be doing a wrap-up, so I'll be ranking what I read in that video if you want to see that, and then just giving a few small thoughts that I may be repeating from this vlog, but maybe I'll end up saying something I didn't say in my vlogs. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a wonderful Victober, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your reading year with these last 2 months. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye!